Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to this StarCraft 2 series between Liquid's TLO and ENC's Serral. Game number 1 was very exciting and resulted in TLO taking a reasonably quick victory off the back of some Zergling aggression, which I was quite surprised to see work. TLO has always been a great and very exciting player to watch because of the ways in which he catches other players off guard or his inventive builds. But Serral is renowned as a player for being able to defend early and take the late game through, well, honestly, just his god tier play. He's a very difficult player to beat. And although this is Home Story Cup, not the most prestigious or uh, well, maybe not prestigious, but competitive tournament, it's really exciting to see other players on the European circuit, such as TLO, taking games in these early stages. We can see that both players, once again, are going for expands within a couple of seconds of one another again. And outside of that, it's quite hard to tell what they would go for at this point. I've been seeing a lot of Roach Ravager in CVZ, but also a good amount of Ling-based play, especially in the last couple of games I've cast between TLO and Solir, and the first game of this series in which TLO appeared to be reading out of Solir's playbook with a very aggressive 2 and then 3 base Ling swell. We can see that Serral is throwing down his gas and pool, whereas TLO has gone for the free hatch before pool build. And this means that Serral is going to have Lings and potentially Speedlings a lot quicker than TLO is going to be able to get them onto the board. And that's going to grant TLO an economic advantage if he can survive, but it's going to grant Serral a much more immediate advantage in being able to put pressure on TLO's hatcheries. It hasn't been scouted yet by Serral, so this isn't a reaction at all. He's only got the Overlords coming across the map here, likewise with TLO. And when this is scouted, I expect that Serral will be very happy because the pool for TLO has only just gone down, whereas the pool for Serral is only a couple of seconds away from finishing, and he will have timed it pretty nicely to have 100 gas very shortly after, either for Zergling speed or whatever else he wants to use it for. And when he realizes that TLO doesn't have any real defenses, no chance at spine crawlers, he will be able to get Zerglings out, of course, but he won't have the speed anywhere near as quickly, and he won't be able to produce the same number immediately because although he has 3 bases from which to produce to Serral's 2, the queen saturation on 2 base can be a lot quicker than the queen saturation on the 3 base Zerg. It doesn't look, however, that Serral is planning on being overly aggressive here. He produced the 4 Lings and the speed and then stopped, and I don't believe that this Overlord has only just worked out that there is a third base, as you can see the creep beginning to spread. And so far, all we can see is that Serral is attempting to catch up with TLO. He's not going to try and produce any more Lings and get across the map. He's going to be happy with having the Lings and the Zergling speed to do a little bit of poking, but the Lings coming out of TLO should be more than enough to push this off. And you can see that both players are going for a Baneling Nest. I think that this is predominantly defensive from TLO and from Serral, just because the last couple of games have been pretty heavy. But if I would see one player being aggressive with it, it would be Serral, trying to punish the earlier third base by getting a couple of Banelings and some Speedlings and going across the map and fighting the Slowlings and Banelings of TLO. It does look like both players are, at least in the short term, very willing to commit to hatchery tech. We don't see anyone going for a lair at any of their bases, and with the Banelings it likely means that there is going to be a committal to Zerglings rather than Roach Tech or going up to left. And we can see that Serral has just trained a number of Lings with that speed upgrade, like I predicted, going to be aggressive across the map and try and leverage the upgrade advantage he has over TLO. He's throwing up an evolution chamber behind this, so I don't think this is going to be all in by any means. And it shouldn't be, because there are already a good number of Banelings from TLO. He's got 6 to the 2 of Serral. This does mean he has less Lings, but honestly, with the Queens, the good creep spread between the bases, meaning that he can get his troops from one side to another relatively quickly, this is going to be hard for Serral to break. You can see that he pokes into the third base here, nibbles on it a little bit with those Lings, and then gets out of there as TLO responds. So this has been a bit of a pressure, but you can see that Serral is transitioning out of this. He's throwing down the lair. He's throwing down. TLO is throwing down the lair. My apologies. And Serral is throwing down the missile attacks, which I would expect to result in a transition to roaches. I'm not sure which tech TLO is going to commit to. He's throwing down more gases here, along with the speed. So maybe we see Mutalisk Ling, Mutaling Baneling as it's called, against a Roach style from Serral. I would be very surprised if, yeah, there's the Roach one. I'd be very surprised if he was doing the missile upgrades without going for Roaches. And I would like to see what TLO is going to do in answer, because Serral has got a really nice scout across the bases. He attempted a Baneling run by there, but the Spinecrawler and the Queen mopped that up with, I don't believe, any drone losses on that particular run by, which is good for TLO, because he's going to need to make sure that despite the continued pressure from the Speedlings, bear in mind he doesn't have his own speed yet either, that he doesn't lose any drones and put himself at an economic disadvantage, because the advantage that he had, at least until a few seconds ago, was that he did have the better economy. We can see that Serral has only just overtaken him in drones, but that both players are continuing to drone up. And here we have TLO. He is going for the Spire, but he's also throwing down the Roach Warren and the Evo Chamber. So I wonder if he's trying to get some Roaches of his own to defend against the Lings and Roaches coming out of Serral, or whether he's going to commit to the Spire tech and just wants to have the Roaches there as a kind of a safety blanket that he can train if he sees anything aggressive coming out across the map from Serral. Serral, on the other hand, is committing much more heavily to the Roaches. You can see that he's researching Glial Reconstitution to give them that bonus speed off of creep, and he's getting pneumatized Carapace or the Overlord speed upgrade. I wonder if this means that he's going to go for some drop-based play. It looks like the way he's congregating the Overlords over these Lings. It's possible, although that could just be coincidence and, a rally point. We're seeing a group of Roaches being trained, but none for TLO yet. He is beginning to throw down the Glial Reconstitution upgrade himself, but he doesn't have the missile weapons upgrade, which means his Roaches are just going to be a lot weaker should he take any sustained trades, which is why I'm expecting TLO to commit more heavily to the Spire tech, that and the fact he was floating 1,000 of each, both gas and minerals, and we see 9 Mutalisks produced immediately. Serral is not prepared for this back at home. He does not have any Spore Crawlers, and the number of Queens that he does have will be melted by any significant Mutalisk pressure. TLO has done a really good job, I believe, of keeping Serral in the dark about this. No, Serral did see it under construction, but whether he noticed what it was, I'm assuming he did. It does seem to me very strange. Here we go, the 5 Spore Crawlers. He's just got the timing down perhaps a little bit better than I do on when they would come out, and he has realized that TLO has committed to these Mutas, and that he needs to do something about that post-haste. The Spore Crawlers should finish up just in time to stop the Mutalisks as they come across the map, and we can see that Serral is already preparing some counter-aggression towards the attempted 4th base of TLO. There are some Banelings here, however, defending this, so I do find it likely that these Lings... Oh, a lovely Baneling connection that actually takes out most of the Ling run by with just 2 Banelings. And that stops the counter-aggression in its tracks, which means that TLO is going to be able to, at least for the time being, keep Serral on this side of the map with his Mutalisks. He will have to worry, however, about the increasing number of roaches if he doesn't get any damage done, because his ground army is very weak, and one of the responses to Mutalisks we often see, or have often seen in the past, is that the player that does not have the Mutalisks will go aggressive and try to force the Mutalisk player to go back onto their side of the map or lose the game. And the Nidus Worm coming down, where's that coming down? It's coming down at the 3rd, does mean that with this Overseer here attempting to grant some vision into the back of TLO's main base, we are going to see some roaches most likely pop up there any second and do quite a bit of damage. I do like that we're seeing the Burrow and the Tunneling Claws upgrades coming out for Serral. It means that if TLO does not bring an Overseer to mop up the Nidus that's going to appear very shortly in one of his bases, then what we're going to end up with is a situation where TLO is going to be forced to bring an Overseer and waste some time to deal with the roaches that are going to be splitting off and looking for those drone lines. We can see that the Overseer does get chased away, but we also have this little changeling here that has not yet been dealt with by TLO, and that might grant the vision needed to throw down the Nidus Worm, should that be the plan. And we can see another Overseer coming out here as well to basically to try and keep TLO back at home with the Nidus Worm when he eventually decides to throw that down. We can see that TLO, however, has got a good read that some aggression might be coming and is throwing down 6 spine crawlers between the natural base and the 3rd to defend the main ramp location. Here we can see that there is a Nidus Worm being built just outside of TLO's vision. I'm not sure what he's attempting to do with this, whether he's just trying to get across the map faster, and we see a huge Ling attack with Mutas take out a prospective 4th base from Serral there. I'm sorry, I was a bit slow to notice that, guys. And this is massive, because although there are a couple of tunneled roaches coming in right now to the bases of TLO that could get some economic damage of their own done, denying that 4th means that if these roaches get mopped up, and they should because most of the army is still at home, that Serral will fall to a slight economic disadvantage. However, we can tell that the 4th base is being effectively denied, and that there are a number of drone pickoffs going on here with the burrowed roaches appearing in every one of TLO's bases. I like what Serral's done here with the Nidus Worms, because he's essentially giving himself the ability to bounce backwards and forwards between the top and bottom of the map, and we can see that this swell of roaches is about to take out this hatchery, and the Mutalisks aren't going to be able to do anything. They will eventually, of course, kill the roaches, because the roaches do not shoot up, but with the Nidus appearing in the main, and the amount of time it takes for Mutalisks to kill roaches, they're all going to escape and get into that Nidus Worm. They probably won't be able to do anything, as the Lings do get us around and kill it, even through the increased armor. And we can see that TLO is now building spore crawlers to help deal with the burrowed roaches and to give him some detection. So right now this doesn't look too dire for TLO, but we can see that there is a lurker den coming out, that there is +3 missile, that there is muscular augments and +2 characters to +2 attacks in chitinous plating, which means that we're going to have some reasonably powerful Ultralisks. But unless I'm wrong, TLO does not have any carapace upgrades of his own. No, so even with chitinous plating, these Ultralisks are going to be very squishy to the numbers of roaches and hydras that are about to pop out for Serral. Or indeed the roaches and lurkers that are about to pop out for Serral. We can see a lone swarm host on the production tab. This isn't going to do a lot. I reckon that was probably a small misclick, but it's quite common to see the infestors, and that will make the Mutalist job a lot harder if they have to worry about the infestors with Burrow, because that can chain fungal with some Hydralisks or some infested Terrans can do a massive amount of damage, even to a large number of Mutalisks. This has been a relatively equal game so far, but we can see, I believe, that TLO is slightly behind on the income because of that denial on the 4th and the fact that Serral has managed to get his up and running unhindered despite the amount of Mutalisk harass that TLO has been attempting to put down. Honestly, I really like the position that we have our red Zerg player, our Finnish Phenom, as he's called in so many broadcasts, because with the Lurkers, with the +3 upgrades, against the chitinous plating only Ultralisks, if he marches across the map, TLO is going to have a very hard time dealing with this with just a swell of Lings, a few Ultralisks, and the Mutaflock. Because let's be honest, Mutas aren't going to do a lot against +2 Carapace Roaches. They will eventually, like I said before, chew through them just by virtue of the fact that nothing on the ground really kills Mutalisks. There isn't a large number of Hydras or anything like that, just a couple of Lurkers. But that won't matter if TLO is just kind of smashed on the ground. Serral will just overrun him, and the Mutalisks and Lings right now are on the wrong side of the map to deal with this Nidus Worm, which is about to emerge at the old 4th base location. And that gives Serral a good chance to attack the 3rd should he want to. It doesn't look like he's going for it immediately, but he is now loading troops into the Nidus Worm. And there we go, they're coming out and they're rallied immediately to the 3rd base of TLO. And if he can deal with this, with even a small number of roaches, he hasn't sent his full force by any means, or just do more economic damage, he's going to put TLO in a very nasty position. We can see that he's focusing down the drones. He's killed a couple of spine crawlers, which means that this is going to be an easier place to attack in the future. And that although the Nidus Worm has been killed, so there's no escapes, there are burrowed roaches now at the 4th base location. So this two-pronged harass has done a fantastic job of killing drones, reducing TLO's already stunted economy after the original destruction of the 4th base. And this really hasn't done a lot to Serral. It does mean he's a little bit down in supply, but I reckon he was probably trading some of those out just to free up some more supply for Lurkers and Hydralisks to enter the field of play and give himself a more well-rounded composition. We are a few seconds away from +1 ground carapace finishing for TLO, so those Ultralisks are going to be a little bit more of a threat, but they're still not as terrifying as they should be at this stage in the game. I do like the Adrenal Glands upgrade. That's really going to help the Zerglings with their, I believe it's +2 attacks, carve through the Roach front line, and we see another Nidus Worm going down here, which could honestly deal a lot of damage to TLO. I like what he's doing, dropping some changelings there to get some extra scouting, and still threatening with the Mutalisks. It's important. Oh, and a Dropper Lord. 3 of them, in fact, dropping some Lings into the main base here. That's really nice. Anything he can do to slow Serral down from moving across the map is going to be really important. The Lurkers will deal with this pretty nicely. They shouldn't take too much damage from this, but the Mutas are going to come across the map. They do have Overseer support, so they are going to be able to threaten these Lurkers and force them to move. But honestly, right now, I don't see what TLO's got that's going to deal with Serral on the ground. I think that Serral is just going to hit that max supply and slowly move out across the map and put down pressure. It would take a sort of a miracle fight for the ground army of TLO to beat Serral at this point, although every second he's in the game and moving towards Vipers and +2 Zerg flyer attacks, and indeed the Adrenal Glands, he is going to be in a better position to take these fights. It's just a matter of, I'm a little bit scared about the better economy and the better upgrades from Serral, although the denial on the 5th is nice because TLO has got his own 5th established. It is right next to a Nidus Worm, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that Nidus Worm filled and some units rally towards this location. But we are seeing that TLO is doing a really nice job of keeping Serral distracted. There was a Ling run by into the 4th base there. There are some Banelings marching here. Not marching, morphing here. and the Mutalisks are always in position to fly across the map and do something else, although we now do have the large, slow march of the majority of Serral's ground force, with the exception of that which was put into the Nidus Worm, slowly beginning to get itself into a position to put pressure down onto TLO's 4th base. You can see a lovely spread of the lurkers here, and those banelings were very nicely picked off. It's just a matter of whether or not the detection and the blinding clouds, indeed, from these Vipers, can shut down the lurkers long enough for the Ultralisks and the Mutas to clean up what else was there. And it does look that with the resupplies currently happening from both players, that TLO has taken a good fight here. It's not been perfect. Actually, now I say that 19 Hydralisks get started and we can see a slight supply disparity. But yeah, most of the ground force of TLO does go down, but the Mutalisks are still in position to chase a lot of this away, and that's what they've done. The Lurkers have picked up and moved out. Gone back home. So the game returns to this sort of semi-equilibrium, but TLO is not getting any more upgrades. His gas is going on these expensive Ultralisks, which will be useful for him, of course, but not as useful as if they had more upgrades. I mean, tier 2 and tier 1 tier 2 attacks and tier 1 Carapace really isn't going to cut it against the soon-to-be free of Serral, with all the other upgrades to buff the units that he's got. We can see right now, though, that TLO does have a substantial income advantage over Serral, and I'm wondering where that's coming from. It looks like it's because a number of drones just got transferred and they're not mining anymore, so that we should see that number jump up in a few seconds. But not to clear the gap entirely, because of course TLO does have his 5th base up and running, and that's only just been saturated by Serral. I wonder if we can see what the worker counts are right now. Yeah, there is an 11 drone advantage for TLO, which obviously isn't game ending. 65 is a decent saturation across a number of bases, but it's just, in the long run, if TLO can keep trading out the ground army effectively, the increased income is going to allow him to remax more easily. We do now see tier 2 ground Carapace coming down, and more Vipers for more blinding clouds, which were crucial in the last fight, shutting down a lot of those lurkers and roaches on the ground. We can see that he's just denied the 5th base of Serral, which is really good because his own 5th base is standing. Despite many attempts from the Nidus to get rid of it, this bleeding hatchery has clung on for dear life, and we see more roaches coming in now to attempt to snipe it. Serral does need to kill this. It would be really important if he can take it down. And it looks like he did. That last roach with his dying breath smote that hatchery into the dust, and that will somewhat equalize the economy between the two players. Just taking a small sip of my water. Yeah, I would like to see TLO double expand here if he's feeling confident, and just get both hatcheries up and running, maybe build some static defense, but because they've been trading out their armies, it's quite a difficult thing for him to do. And we can see that Serral is double expanding. He's trying to say, well, you can kill one of them, but I will defend the other, and then I will be able to keep my economy in a better spot than you will. A little bit of roach harass, just killing some of these extractors, which if TLO ever retakes the base, he will obviously have to spend a negligent amount of minerals to replace. He is finally going to mop up the Nidus Worm with a couple of Ultras. I'm glad to see that the Nidus Worm... Wait a minute. Does he think that's dead? What HP is that on? That is like 1 HP Nidus. Oh, I'm missing a fight in the middle of the map. It looks like Serral has pushed in here and managed to, with the lurkers, get himself a decent position at the bottom / top of this ramp. Although the nice subducts there are going to put the lurkers in harm's way for a second, and with the overseers he can see them to focus them out. But this is not a great fight for Liquid TLO. He's gonna move those Ultralisks up the ramp and into the lurker lines, which are decimating his ground forces with the assistance of the Roaches and the Hydralisks. And we can see that the supply has now dropped fairly drastically for TLO. And that is only going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen, as Serral does his best impersonation of a tank siege, slowly moving these lurkers forwards to solidify his position and claim more ground. The fourth base going down is absolutely horrible for TLO. He needs that mining, even though it's not the most fully saturated base in the world right now. Losing the fourth and losing this position means that his fifth base and his third base are under siege, and it won't be too hard for Serral to take up a better position and eradicate some of these bases. We do see that some changelings here are body blocking those drones and giving the roaches some time to fire on them, and that these roaches will, if left alone, eventually take out the fourth, what is now the fourth base, what was the fifth base of TLO. And TLO's army is split. He's got some Ultralisks and some Banelings here, but there are Lurkers at the top of that ramp with some Hydras defending them, while Serral slowly pushes in with the rest of his forces to the third base. If Serral can destroy the third base and beat the army here, then this should just be game over. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. TLO does tap out of our second game after what was a slow, but I'm going to say a convincing victory for Serral. I really didn't feel that at many points during that mid-game he was under a huge amount of pressure. He didn't really lose any decisive fights, but the upgrade advantage was always in Serral's favour. He was managing to keep hold of his bases a little bit better for quite a while there. And even though TLO did have an income advantage, if you've got more drones, then that difference has to be made up in army supply when both players are maxed out. Wow, that's two very exciting games, and I'm looking forward to bringing you game number 3. So stay tuned, everyone, and bye-bye for now.